So welcome back to the Woodgrafter, three-part series doing an in-depth look at the Dewalt DWE 7485 table saw. That sounds good? Stick around. Now, if you've followed the channel for a while, you know I typically take on furniture commissions, or I've started to build out craft projects. Both sides of the business are doing reasonably well. What I want to do is increase the productivity and the throughput of my small workshop. The TS55 track saw has been an incredible success in my workshop, and I'm still going to use that. But for some of those long repeatable rip cuts and for some of those cross cuts that are slightly wider than my table, I want a new solution so I can increase productivity. Table saw is a promise of that solution. As always, I've purchased something that I need in my shop. If your situation working in a small shop is similar, that's going to be great for you. And I've purchased this with my own money. Dewalt don't know I'm making this video, so it's not sponsored. And the people I bought this from don't know I'm making this video either. But I do want to give a shout out for the company I used. I used a company called FFX Tools, and I'll leave a link to their website here. And this was incredible. It came out at slightly below retail price, so I got a delivered price on this of £499. I lay in bed on a Friday evening and said, you know what, I've got the money, so I ordered this. 9:30 Sunday morning, knock on the door, man with a great big yellow box. You can't say fairer than that. And I've used FFX a number of times for a number of products. They've got a really great range at a really great price. Free delivered offered if you're in the UK over a certain limit. Check them out, it might well be worth your while if you don't know them. Right, today I want to unbox this. No idea what to expect. I've done a bit of research like all of us do. I watched some other YouTube videos and I think it's going to be the one for me. Let's get it unboxed, some initial thoughts about the quality of this thing and see how we get on. First observation, incredibly well packed, strong multi-layered cardboard box, and it's all covered in this nice plastic to keep it all safe. So that's good to start with. So let's look at the box. We've got the Dewalt brand, lots of yellow, which is Dewalt's trade colour, the model number WE7485, and a pretty picture of the thing itself. It's got some basic information on the side of the box. It's an 1850 watt motor that runs at 5,800 RPM. It weighs 22 kilograms. It will do a cut from 45 degrees to 0. It's got some dust extraction on it. It's got a blade of 65 millimeters, 210 millimeters diameter. And the overall maximum rip cut is 622 millimeters, which is quite good, I think. And it's got something called airlock, and I've not got a clue what that is. Another pretty picture. And on the side of the box, just another brand, picture of the thing, and once again, the number. And that's about it. That's all the information on the box. It's sealed all the way around with a tape. So if you get one that's not super sealed, then maybe it's already been opened, but this one is so well packaged and so well sealed. Now opening up the box, we can see straight away we've got this protective cardboard, and I love that because sometimes when you're running a knife down this, you can actually scratch a product if it's packed too close to the top. So I am a fan of that thought. Just checking they've not hidden anything away inside this cardboard, and they haven't, so that's good. I've got a box of bits. I've got another box of bits. I've got some paperwork down here, and that's about, oh, got some more paperwork. And that's it. And there you go. There is the Dewalt compact table saw. Pretty nice, I think. Pretty nice. Let's see what we get in the boxes. So in the large cardboard box, we have the combined blade guard, extractor and theriving knife. In the smaller box, we have a dust extractor adapter and a mitre gauge. Clip to the device itself, we also have a push stick. There's a cable tidy here on this side. On the front, secured here by a single butterfly screw, or a couple of spanners for changing the blade, one assumes. The top here is cast aluminium in this rather grey fetching powder coat paint. The frame of this looks to be steel tubular, so I imagine that's quite rigid, and it does have quite a lot of weight inside this. There's a small adjustment handle just here. Pushing that up allows you to release the fence, and hiding away here at the end is a fence that simply clips off. Now, one of the things I liked about this one is this rack and pinion style fence. I just felt that would be nice and precise, but we'll check that in a second and see how it's looking. The fence can go into one of three positions. Here at the end, about 100mm further back, and then one at this end as well. And that obviously allows you to position the fence in a number of locations. These here are torque screws, so it looks like there is an element of adjustment if we find that the fence isn't parallel to the blade, which is great. I was worried about how much adjustment you could get in this, and that's super simple. Again, much easier than that. Locks into place, 1, 2 clips, and that's it, the fence is in place. Fence has a trick up its sleeve in that it's got this part here that spins out, and that can rest in one of two locations. It can rest so it's flush to the top, and that allows you to come in with incredibly narrow rip cuts here. Or it can drop down to a second position where it's now flush with this table, and that gives you a feed off on the end here, giving you that maximum cutting capacity, which I think is pretty useful. I like the way it folds up there in the back. Got these two brackets, that's where your push sticks fits, and that's always available. And once you've got the fence adjusted, flick that switch down and that should lock it in with no movement, and it does. Got two calibrated gauges here in centimetres, which is great because I'm in a metric workshop. I believe if you buy this in the US, it comes in imperial. I've seen that on videos where that's actually in inches. And the reason that we've got two gauges here is because we've got two positions for the fence. While it's in this front position, we're going to use the top yellow one. So 0 on that yellow gauge should be right up against that blade. We'll check that shortly. If I unlock it and move this back to its other position, then I'm using the bottom gauge, and that should now be 10 centimetres from the cutting edge of the blade. But again, we'll check that shortly. Fence can turn round, so if I wanted to do cuts on the other side of the blade, I can use this position here. But at this point, there's no markings on here, so I don't know what this distance would be. It's got a little indicator here, a plastic indicator, 2 screws and long slots, so that could obviously be adjusted to make sure that everything's nicely calibrated. So it looks like it's got some pretty rudimentary but useful calibration features. I can adjust the position of these little black knobs, and the same on the back there, so I can change it in relationship to the blade, so I can make it parallel. And I can use these 2 little screws here to adjust the position of this red marker to make sure it's dialed into my blade. Happy days. It comes with a 0 clearance cutting plate, this bright yellow things here. Now this does seem to be a design change from the ones I've seen on YouTube. The ones I've seen had a quick release catch here that you unflicked, use your finger and pull this out. But this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws inside. And I believe this front one here is actually a quick release screw. So just turning that one, slackening it off, allows you to flick the plate out, and it's got this black clip here that simply just captures on here and locks it down. But look at this, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 lugs, and these screws that we saw on the top of the plate are actually captive, and what they're for is to adjust the height of that plate. Now obviously you want this plate to be flush with the aluminium surface, so those screws allow you to adjust that, and then it should be as easy as locking this back in again. Tighten that down, and yeah, there's no movement in that, so that does seem to work pretty well. So we've got another adjustment there in the plate that's been thought through for us. On the front here we've got some controls. We've got the start button and a flappy paddle stop button, which you can either quickly hit with your hand or your knee when it's all assembled onto a stand. And it's got this little pull down grey lever here that just simply covers the green button so you can't accidentally get the machine running. And there's also a channel going through that grey paddle and the black surround, so you can actually lock that into place. And one assumes if you had a long stem lock, you could actually lock that off for additional safety. It's plastic, it seems to be fairly robust, but I could well see if that was kicked out on a job site, that could get knocked quite easily, but it's good to know the features are there. We've then got the adjustments here for the height of the blade, just the turny handles will raise and lower the blade mechanism. It's a worm drive that feels incredibly smooth, and then it's got a flappy handle here that allows you to just adjust the overall angle of cut. And just looking inside, that just seems to be a standard pivot. It's got a 210mm blade, 8¼ inches, if that makes more sense to you, and an overall cutout of around about 67mm, which is not too bad. Now this will obviously lean over, and I can come from 0 up to 45. It's quite stiff, but it does work. That obviously changes the cut height, and that's coming in at 47mm. Now there's no stays on this, so it's where you set it is where it goes. It's pretty stiff, but it does seem to do the job. Now I can't see a way of locking down the height adjustment once you've got that in place. I'm not sure that's going to be a problem to me or not in use. Time will tell. Now what I did like about this one is that the riving knife is actually fixed to the blade assembly. Now what that means is the riving knife will move up and down with the blade. You can see that going up and down there. Two reasons I like the idea of that. Reason number one, once that blade is retracted and that plate's in place, there's no interference, it's a flat surface. Now I'm going to be mounting this and building a cabinet that goes at the end of my workbench, just down here out of camera shot, and when it's not in use, I want everything to be able to fold flat. So with the fence stored back into its parked position, and this all retracted down here, this is a completely flat surface. And that's fantastic. Now the other thing is that if you wanted to make things like boxes, and very often you make a box as a full sealed unit and then you cut the top off to give you that perfect fit, the idea of the riving knife being slightly lower than the cutting edge of the blade, no matter where that blade is set, is actually very, very useful in that scenario. Now while we're talking about the riving knife, you can take the riving knife off, and hidden away underneath the table there is this yellow nut here. Just see that? Hiding away inside there. So obviously you reach through and then you pull that yellow nut, and that then allows you to remove the riving knife pretty easily. That's a bit awkward to get to, but then again, how often do you want to change your riving knife? A couple of turns on that knob and that just then slides out. And if you wanted to drop in your blade guard, slot that into there. You just pull that knob again, slots down and tightens up, and now we've got the blade guard and the dust in place, which I think is pretty good. In terms of dust ports, it's got two dust ports. It's got one here at the top for above table collection, and it's got one here at the back for underneath table collection. This is a sealed unit. The blade and everything sits inside here, the motor's here, blade sits inside here, and there's a couple of canvas covers that stops the dust getting into the motor. So anything that comes into this bottom collection point here obviously exhausts here. Now out of the box, my Festool hose does push down inside there, but it does come with an extractor, an adapter, which I think is probably a good idea to use, and the Festool hose will just clip onto there, but by God, that's a tight fit, so probably isn't really designed for that. So once you've got the adapter on here and you've got this one, they are actually the same size, but I think for my purposes my hose is just going to go directly inside there like that, so that's okay. If you have the smaller Festool hose, that fits inside really quite beautifully, and it'll also fit inside there really quite beautifully as well. So if you've got the hose that came with a Festool vat that you're using, that does fit pretty well. If you've got the larger upgraded hose, which I probably would recommend for the amount of dust coming off this one, it doesn't fit onto these brackets very well, but does fit directly into the hole, but a bit tight and a bit clunky. Now, as we saw before, we have these two spanners for changing the blade that's stored at the back of the machine here. Both spanners are the same, open-ended, closed-ended. Open-ended down the back of the blade till you find the bite. closed end at the front one here, pretty tight, as you'd expect. Take off the bolt, take off the arbor, and there's your blade. Dewalt Extreme DT20432QZ, 30mm. So if you want to change the blade, it's pretty standard size, which is great. 210mm, 30mm center. You can get those pretty much anywhere in a whole variety of different blades, which is cool. Let's just drop this blade back in. You don't want to go mad tightening that down. They do self-tighten a little bit, but make sure it's nice and firm. Now, as furniture makers, we need to drive a high level of precision out of this machine. It's designed for a job site, and as you can see, there was zero assembly of this. I just literally took it out of the box, banged it on the bench, and other than showing you all the bits and bobs, that should be directly ready to go. So I'm going to put it all back together, drop the fence on, and I just want to take some measurements to see how close to perfect accuracy this is. We've got some adjustments, so we know we can adjust things, which is cool, but how close is it out of the box? First thing I want to see is how level is this yellow plate with the overall surface. So I'm going to come in with a straight edge, and I can just sight straight down there, and it's out by a country mile. And it's out by quite a lot, to the point where I can actually slide underneath there, just about slide underneath there. You know, my steel rule just begins to catch. Not super accurate, but my steel rule is about a millimetre thick. So there's a millimetre gap at the back there, and at the front, pretty similar. So this yellow plate is probably down from the surface by about a millimetre. Now, I'm not saying that's a problem or an issue, because we know we can adjust it. It's got some adjustments in here for us, but it's a millimetre out. I just want to check how well this angle works. So I've raised the blade all the way up, and I've got this all the way over, so it's set to 0 degrees. I'm just going to come in with a known square. You're now on mobile cam, so it's allowing you to get in there and see the action. And what do you think? I think that looks pretty good, actually. I think that's probably more or less bang on. Although it's not accurate, let's just try something a bit more visual. Just going to come in with my angle finder, zero that down. $90 degrees, so yeah, so that's probably okay. I'm now going to move it through to the 45 degree. So that's going to give me a reading of 44.6, so 0.4 degrees out. So we're okay in the 90, which is where it's going to live most of its life. The 45 is 0.4 degrees out. That's probably okay. However, I've just noticed there's another adjustment here for the 90, and there's another adjustment here for the 45. So when we come to calibrate, we can tune this thing in to be bang on those two angles that we need, which is awesome. Now, I'm also interested in this blade being parallel to this mitre gauge here. Just going to come in with my precision rule, and I can just see this edge here shining through that hole at 120, and at this edge I can see the same. So this blade is actually parallel to this machined edge here, which is awesome. This side, it's coming in, it's 121, and here it's coming in at 121. So I'm loving that. So out of the box, this blade is perfectly parallel to my two mitre slots, which is fantastic. So if I now come in with my DeWalt mitre gauge, and I position this to 90 degrees. Now there's no stops on this, so that's not going to be super accurate. I should then be able to take a measurement from here to the blade, bang on 90 degrees. So cool, so we know we've got our 2 tracks parallel to the blade, and we can indeed get a good 90 degree, pretty much on this scale, to give me 90 degree cuts as well. Happy with that out of the box, very happy out of the box. Now this, I think, is a standard mitre slot, so in theory should take something a little bit more substantial, which is my Incra fence, and it does. This is cool, so I'm going to be able to use my Incra mitre on here, and with that set to 90, and I know that this is accurate, bang on 90 degrees, bang on 90 degrees. So I'm happy, super happy with that accurate. And also bonus that I can use my Incra. I'm going to come in with the fence. And I'm going to set this fence first of all right up against that blade, there, lock it down, and that's reading slightly off 0 on that gauge, not a lot, but a little bit. Now I'm going to move this over and set it to 100, 10 centimeters, 100 millimeters. And I'm going to measure from the outside of that tooth there, so I'm actually reading 101 millimeters, and the outside of that tooth there, get the right tooth, is also 101 millimeters. So out of the box, this is perfectly parallel. So let's look at the positives. 90 degree cut, bang on. The 2 T-tracks perfectly parallel with the blade, bang on. The fence parallel to the blade and the 2 tracks, bang on. 45 degree cut off by 0.4 degrees, and the scale is reading out by about 1 millimeter. That's not too bad, and that's probably acceptable for what it is designed for. Bang it straight onto a site and start to cut. But I love the fact I've got some adjustments, and in the next video we're going to tune this thing in so it reads perfectly, which is what we need in our joinery, in our furniture shop. I'll see you next time on the Woodgrafter.